can we talk about as people of God, spiritual people? And that's what this post is about. This is where people of spirit gather every Sunday morning. We call this Sensational Sundays. And it's sensational because all of our senses are involved in this. Dealing with something spiritually that we've never dealt before. We're not in our buildings, but yet at the same time, we are still church. We are still people of faith. But it's making the definition of it is totally beginning to change and beginning to move up and move up higher. Welcome to my sanctuary. I'm Dr. Ed. I'm Ed Montgomery. They call me Dr. Ed. And welcome to my sanctuary. This is my sacred space. This is the place where I am. It's where I study. It's where I come up with concepts. It's where some concepts I use, some concepts I don't. Where some things make sense, some things don't make sense. It's where you cry. It's where you pray. It's where you feel the hurt and the pain of a generation. It's where you have the joy and exhilaration and, the fist pump yes, but at the same time, it's also the place where you feel the frustration of a community that is around you. George Floyd. We all know that name. And we all are aware of that 7 minutes of when a police officer had his knee on the neck of an African-American man, on the neck of a black man, and the last few minutes of his life, they're even saying his life was actually gone. And 3 other police officers stood by, watched it, saw it happening, and from what we understand, said nothing. And from this, in Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, it has begun first protest, and then the protest grew stronger and stronger. The White House got involved. The White House started making statements that they weren't even sure of what they were saying. That when the looting starts, the shooting starts, which was a statement made by a Southern police officer, I believe out of Miami, during the civil rights movement, that was against the people who were protesting. White House hasn't done a very good job in helping to understand. Well, I'm not even dealing with that. But my job here today is I just want to say something to you as we get further on into this. What is it that I believe God is speaking into us right now? And I know you may say, what in the world could God be saying? There is something that God is saying to us at this moment, at this time, probably several things, not just one thing. But I believe there's something that hit me so hard last night. What do we do? Especially those of us of our generation who have actually gone through this before and experienced it. Now, I'm not saying we've gone through it like this generation is going through it. But there are some similarities that are here. And there is a passage of text, ancient text, from modern wisdom, a passage of scripture that I believe can speak to us at this moment, at this time. Somebody said, well, is it a message of comfort? Well, I don't think we're looking for comfort. I think answers are going to have to come right now. I think all we can do is just talk about what's happening. How do I feel? expressing at least how do I feel at this moment right now. You know, to disconnect ourselves, and we're having church, but then this is going on in the world, but yet let's just have church and forget about everything that's going on. Sounds like an anesthetic to me. God is connected to this generation, and he's connected to everything that is happening. I want to welcome you here today. Thank you for being here at Abundant Life Center, Abundant Life Cathedral online. Because whether some people don't realize or not, we don't go to church. We are church that comes to gather. We are a gathering. We are the ones that create church when we come together. We are already the church. This is my sanctuary. And so thank you for allowing me to bring my sanctuary into your sanctuary. Just scoot over on your couch, because I got some other people with me, and we just want to sit down, and together we want to watch this. Not going to be long, because the world is moving so fast. So many things are happening. At the same time, you've got a rocket ship that's going up in the air. You've got astronauts that are landing on a space station. And so what you're looking at is about a couple of minutes, 2-something minutes of something happening in space when the booster or when the rocket disconnects from the other. We're looking at astronauts who are now able to look down upon a planet that seems so big and going through so much heck and hell. But yet as they rise higher, they're able to see the planet in its perspective. And are going to be on a space station where there are people who are looking at it where this is not even happening. We're looking at several things going on in our world. And we're wondering, how is this thing going to end? What is it that God is saying, and how do we deal with this spiritually? Look, if I seem a little discombobulated or, shifting from here to there, I'm going to admit to you, yes, I am. Because I watched what's happening all over this country, and I've watched the protesters, and I've watched the fires, I've watched the interaction with the police, I've watched the back and forth. And of course, many of my generation, we're just biting our lower lip saying, Lord, don't shoot. And this is where our prayers are. Come on in. And I know some of you that are still coming on in. Please come on in. Have a seat on this post and on this line. Thank you for being with us. Make sure that if you're here for the first time, you can say one of two things. You can say first time, type it in, or say new and type in new if you're here for the first time. And then there are people that are going to holler at you and say, hey. And maybe you have a question or anything that you want to say, because some of you are saying, listen, I'm praying for America. I'm praying for our country, praying for Minnesota. But this is happening in Houston. It's happening in Atlanta. It's happening even in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's happening all over this country. Something is shifting, and something, it's not shifting. Something has shifted, and something has changed. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and we're watching all of this going on. We don't even know the results of what's going to happen with this concerning a pandemic in 2 or 3 weeks. The age of this protest, you're not looking at people over 40. You're looking at another generation, teens in their 20s and their 30s. And I'm telling you the way I feel. I feel the same way as if my sons would be out in the middle of all of this, because right now, here is why I am on the edge. Here is why I am looking over the abyss. Here is why I am asking, where is this going to lead? Because you see, this is America's children. This is our children, not just my particular physical son. This is our children out there on the front line, in the middle of their world and in the middle of their country, because they are on the front line and they're shifting the dynamics of our country, because our country is not going to be the same. Let me tell you what scripture grabbed me. It was Psalms 23. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not lack, or I shall not want. Maketh me to lie down in green pastures. You say that's comfort. Listen to me. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me beside still waters. And when I read that, he maketh me to lie down. Okay, that's something that God is saying. Hey, lay down in green. He maketh me to lay down. That's something that God is telling us. Hey, but there's a passage that said, he leadeth me beside the still waters. And what that says to me is that we can be led somewhere, but to drink the still waters, to drink peace, to have peace, is not up to God who leads us. It's up to us to drink the still waters. And what I'm looking at right now is that the waters are actually a little rough. And those that are out there on the front line are looking for change. What you're looking at with George Floyd is, and what you're looking at that's happening in our country, this is not all about one incident. But this was an incident that our country was able to look, because we've seen many videos like this. We've seen many. We just, Ahmaud Arbery, we just saw videos of young black men shot and killed. And what's bothering people is when it happens, what is being done? It took days before they arrested the man who had his knee on a handcuffed George Floyd. The protesters had begun by just protesting. And if that had been done early, we might not be at this point. The second question is that all of these people are standing around saying, look at what you're doing. Look at what you're doing. The man can't breathe. Stop. Look, please. And they begged the officers. Not just the officer who was perpetuating the crime, the murder, not just that officer, but the other three that were standing by. And the question is, why aren't those other three in custody? Had it been any other black man, had it been somebody else, they would have handcuffed him down to jail, put him in jail, then booked him, and then waited on the judge to get bond. Then they would sort it out. Why aren't those other three officers in jail? This is what the protesters are saying. Had they all been in jail, we might not be here right now. Why aren't they? Why aren't those other three in jail? Why? What is it in the law? Is there a law that says that can't be done? And not just that. This was just a straw that broke the camel's back. This was just a tip of it. Everything in the past has led up to this. Over 280 years of slavery. Over 400 years of oppression. All of this is led up to, and they asked the question about the police. Why were the police not charged, called in? Why are those men still out? And they're saying, well, we want to make sure we have the right case and we don't want to mess up the case. How can you mess up something? This is what the protesters are saying. You want to cut the protest down right now? Put them all in, put them in jail. Let them sit in the cell for a while. Let them sit there until you can sort all of this out. It's about what has, this generation is tired. Now, let me add something else to it. Because it's not just that fire. We know the racism is there. And young black men have sat back and they have taken it. And they have, their fathers have sat down and told them, now don't be out there in the street. If the police come up behind you, put your hands on the wheel, do this, drop your head. Don't holler at them. Do not become aggressive. Your job is to come home at night. That's terror. For that father, it's terror. For that mother that has to say this to a young son without a father in the house, that's terror. To live like that is terror. And to live for hundreds of years like that is terror. They're angry. This is what's beginning to surface. Not only that, but you're dealing with a generation that in the last 3 years, going on to the 4th year, with the president that's in the office right now. Ladies and gentlemen, look at your country. Look at how the country was handed off from the previous president to what's happening right now. You can say all you want and say, well, it had nothing to do with this one or that. But look at what the country was and the direction it was in. And then you have a group of people that did not like that direction. But now we're looking at where our country is. You're in a pandemic. We don't know what to do with a pandemic. Many of the rules and the regulations and all of the things that were put in place to help us in the middle of a pandemic were moved away by this administration. So now here we are. Living who's on the front lines. Here we are in the middle of protests. Here we are in the middle of others that are out looting and coming out of your White House and coming out of Washington. It's being called, they're being called, the looters be called people who are influenced by the left or the liberal or the Democrats. It's politicized. You got your young people that are saying, I'm graduating from college. I'm coming out of school. I can't get a job, especially in the field that I went to school for. Then when the pandemic hits, if I want to get out, I'm young. I want to party. I want to at least have some kind of fun, get some kind of energy. They're young. But then they're told they got to be careful because they can bring disease back to their parents. They love their parents. They love their grandparents and never want to harm any of them. So you're dealing with pressure here, terrorism, pressure. This thing has been like a major firecracker that's been lit. And then they're screaming at an officer saying, get your knee off of his neck because he's saying he can't breathe. And when he was saying he can't breathe, that George Floyd was echoing what this younger generation, the generation that has America in their hands, is this generation that is saying, with all of this debt and the world you're giving us, restaurants that we can't go to, jobs that we're not sure we're going to have. What's the future of our country? And I'm going to tell you later on that one scripture, that one passage of modern wisdom that I got, that I said, here's what is the only thing we can do right now to help get help with this generation? What is that we can, because many of us of our age, we're sitting back now, just looking. And yes, I'm going to go into my little pet peeve here. I'm just going to be honest with you. Because I believe that everything in the natural comes out of the spiritual. I believe in the beginning God created heaven and earth. I believe that in verse 2 of chapter 1 of Genesis, and the earth was void and dark, chaotic. Hey, if that's not a spiritual connection right there, I don't know what is. And the earth was dark, it was void, it was chaotic, it was empty. It says, but the Spirit of God, the presence of God, moved upon the face of the waters, which means that in the middle of the chaos, there was the potential, the ability to change. We have the ability to change. We have been brought to a fork in the road to be able to change. We have been brought to this place where I call it the valley, Ezekiel's valley of dry bones. We're in a place now where the bones have been dried and the winds of centuries and decades of refusing to change has dried out America's bones. Someone was talking about that how our police departments have been trained more in military style. In other words, into stopping people, into putting their knees on necks, figuratively as well as naturally. And they've not really learned about conflict resolution. What's happening in our prisons? Why are there so many of our African-American young men in prisons? What's happening with COVID-19 in our prisons? What happens after decades and generations of African-American men in prisons? They go in for smoking weed. And they come out with a criminal mind. And we see this happening generation after generation. Then we turn around and here we are. We're sitting here in church. Now listen, I'm not beating up anybody, but here we are sitting in church. You know how I feel about church. One thing I feel about church, and that is, I watched when the president, and I don't need to be beating up on the president because really right now, I'm not even thinking about what he's saying. I'm thinking about what we're saying. It's about what we're saying. I'm not even going to go down that rabbit trail. I'm not chasing the president rabbit. Because he's who he is, and they do what they do. What I'm concerned with is how we fare here. Because there's also not just a political leg, a government leg, a police leg. There's also a spiritual leg here. There's some spiritual things that are out of place here. The president said, go back to church. And I say, I've never left church. Somebody can say, I'm a witness. I know what you're talking about. I've never left church. We're in church right now. Church is not some building that we go to. If that's what we've been taught, unteach it. We go to a building when we can. We go to a building when we have the opportunity. I don't go to church because I have the constitutional right to go to church. I go to church because my people, over 200 some years ago, when they decided to go to church, and let me tell you something, our people were spiritual before they got to America. We go to church because this is where we gather. We were people that were not allowed to gather. We were not allowed to protest. It was illegal for us to gather. Other communities could, but we couldn't. But we're gathering now. Right now. We're gathering right now. Because our church is in here. Our church is up here. let me say this because I don't want to. They told me you can't forget. You got to, and I'm not going to take that along with it. But our contributions is about keeping our message out. I'm not talking about a message of, well, we're just going to pray and we're just going to comfort those, and we're, hoping and praying for people that they're going to get better. No. This thing about God right now has to shift. Our mindset has to shift. That's why this broadcast and other broadcasts that are out there are so important. That's why it's not just important enough for me to do this. Listen, take what I'm saying. Pull out what you don't like, throw it away, keep what you do like. You get out there and you say it too. Let your voice be heard. And this is what happens when we come together. Take a moment. Go to myalc.org. That's www.myalc.org. That's our website. It's our brand new website. myalc.org. There's a donate button on there. Click it. Because, it's not just enough to say, yeah, I'm with you, but it is that support that says, I'm with you. I see it. I watch it happen. If you're on the app right now, take that moment, hit that donate button. It's right there on the app. You can just go through it. Hit that donate button, and you can give right through that app. And if you are watching on your computer or you say, I got my phone, I want to give, you can text to give. Connected with it. It's a simple, easy thing. Even I can do it. And all you got to do is just pull up your text like you're getting ready to text a friend, and you just put in that 2, and that's the phone number, 713-742-2035. That's 713-742-2035. And write in the message, you can text how much you want to give. $5, $10, $3, $8. Listen, you make that decision. And of course, you can always mail in, and you can get that address off of our website at myalc.org. And thank you so much for your contribution, because you're the one that's keeping this going. You are that church. Don't let them take this from you. Spiritually, this is what has held our people together, because the spiritual aspect of who we are is what fuels, it's what makes this work. I'm not talking about just believing in this God that's up in the sky. I'm talking about a God that is right here with you, that is right here in you. And this is another thing, because how our police officers and how our government and listening to our president talking about go back to church. And I'm asking the question, why would you go back to church? What are you going to hear in your church? If your church is not a church of color, what are you going to hear in that church? Are you going to be back praising the Lord like nothing happened? Well, we're back to normal. We're just worshiping Jesus like nothing happened. How many of you are going to go back to your church that may not be a church of color? And at least stand up in the pulpit, pastors, and say, I'm praying for the state of Minneapolis, for Minnesota. I'm praying for Texas. I'm praying for communities, because it was not right. I have watched our country become divided spiritually. When you have people who are standing up because their young black boys are being killed, but at the same time, churches that are not predominantly of color will have prayer meetings and parties and show support for police officers. I don't have a problem with that, because everybody needs support. But it's almost as if whenever something like this happens, Another community wants to say, well, we support the police officers because evidently you're being too hard on them. We can never change like that. My brothers and my sisters in other pulpits, what are you going to say to your parishioners? You've got the police officers in your congregations. It's the same thing that happened with Dr. King in the Birmingham jail when he had his letters from the Birmingham jail. He was writing this to church leaders. Church leaders who stood by. They didn't talk against the movement. I mean, at least not publicly. But they were silent. Kind of reminds me of when one police officer has their knee on the neck of a man that says, I can't breathe, and the other three are silent. The other three reminds me of what was happening during Dr. King in that Birmingham jail thing. They were just silent. Well, you can't blame us, Dr. King. We didn't say anything against the movement, but they were silent. We didn't do anything against the movement. As a matter of fact, if you just wait, you just wait for a while and let it naturally take place in America. And that's what Dr. King was talking about. We can't wait. I'm in the city of Houston. I've had megachurch pastors tell me, well, if the people of color would just wait, then God would fix all of this. And that's why I'm a little leery of just sitting back, because we have waited long enough. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not there for looting everything, because many of these businesses are black-owned businesses. But there are things that can be done. Oh yeah, I'm watching my time. There are things that can be done. And here is one of those things. And this is the thing that I wanted to get to spiritually before my time is up. And hold on, because I'm not off the air just yet, because I want to ask you, I want to know how you feel. You got a comment section right there. And that comment section is your power. You got a like button on your computer. That's your power. You have a share button. That's your voice. If you took a moment and shared this, I know maybe I'm a little radical right here. Maybe I've said some things that might have offended some. But right now is the way I feel. And I think some of you right now feel the same way and maybe have not been able to vocalize. There are whites, blacks, people with color, people without color out there protesting now. Yeah, you got some looters. Yeah, you got some others out there. But this is where we come in. As people of faith. And I'm going to tell you what we can do. And this, it's this right here. You can share it with a friend. Take that extra mile and say, let me share with one of my friends. I got somebody online. Well, you know, they don't want me to send all this. Well, it's time to send all of this. If I said anything. If there's a comment that you're saying right now, listen, I hear what you're saying. You might have a comment say, I may not agree with everything you're saying, but I hear some things that I like. Maybe you're saying, I'm praying for our people. There's nothing more powerful than prayer. I think I believe more in the power of prayer now than, you know, I don't want to admit it 20 years ago. You know, okay, I'm praying for you, da, 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 da. But now, when I understand the energy and the power of prayer. And I'm asking those of you, now that I think I've found a little niche right here. Listen, if you're praying with me, comment. I'm praying with you. How many people are we going to link together and saying, I'm praying with you? If I got one saying, there we go, I'm praying with you. I'm praying. If it's just simple, I'm praying. Or if you just want to make it even simpler than that, just say praying. Whatever you want to say, connected. There we go. 1, 2, 4. Praying with you. Do you see it? Yeah. I don't see it very well because I don't see those little words are tiny to me. Okay, that's why I don't see it. Or I would say your name and everything else. But I see when I blow it up, I can see those little things. Praying. How many people can we get on this little prayer thing right here? And if you like what's being said, those likes create algorithms that Facebook sees. And when Facebook sees them, it opens it up to other people and they open that bandwidth up. I don't know quite how it's done. But when those likes are there, and especially those hearts are done, Facebook opens it up. So press that like button. If you like this, press that like button. And I'm almost done, but even if I get a little boring, stay with me toward the end because that says something else to Facebook. It also says something to YouTube. That we're speaking to our country. Now, I'm going to pray about this thing. And those of you that are still typing in, praying, we're going to pray about this. But I told you there was a word, something that we can do. And it's going to sound real weird to some of you. But it comes up in Psalms 23. Here it is. Are you ready? The section goes into, yea, though I walk, or yea, yes, that's English version. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. This is where we are right now. Coronavirus. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It doesn't say that death is hitting us. You say, well, I don't see any death. I don't know anybody who's died. Well, you know people who are around you. So what you're feeling is the shadow of it. The shadow is touching you. For some, death has touched them. But for many of our younger generation, you felt the shadow. For many of our older generation, vintage wine, you feel the shadow of it. The coldness. It hasn't hit you, but you feel it. Some of you are even dealing with it. Yea, yes, though I walk through the valley between two mountains of the shadow of death. Here's what he says. He says, I will fear no evil. I will fear no evil, whether it's the evil of the coronavirus, whether it's the evil of what we call systemic or racism that's already in a system. Because we now got to change the system. People say, well, let's just get the bad cops, get the bad apples. No, the system has to change, and we got to do it now. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. What causes us not to fear? He says, because thou art with me. Now listen to this. Anytime I've ever preached or talked about it, I would say, I will fear no evil because thou, God, are with me. Here is what I'm saying to our generation. Here's what your older generation is saying to our younger generation that is out there on that front line, doing the best they can. We may not agree with how they're doing it. We may not agree with what they're doing right now. But I want you to know, I am with you. The God, not up in the sky, but the God that is in me and the God that is in those of us who are of another generation. It doesn't matter whether we like it or agree with it, but we're holding your hands as you walk through this valley. As you walk through this valley of protest, we got your hands. As you walk through this valley that you don't know how it's going to turn out, we got your hands. As you walk through this valley of all these student loans that have piled up on you, we got your hands. We're holding your hands. As you walk through this valley of being young black men and young black women who are having to going to have to deal with the future, we got your hands. Whether we feel it's right or whether we feel it's wrong, doesn't matter here. We'll talk with you. We got your hands. I'm going to be your coach. I'm going to be on the sidelines. We're not playing football with you because this is your football game. What you can do is say, jump a little higher, move a little further, watch that receiver, watch that person that's coming at you. This is all we can say, even religiously and spiritually. I'm saying the pastors, the churches that you're going to build are not going to be the same as the churches we built. It's not about a mega church. It's about a Main Street church. It's about a church that matters. Not a mega, but a matter church. Not a mega hat, but a matter hat. It's not about the celebrities that come in that brings big crowds. It's about the substance that is in a church now when we come back together. Yes, we're doing. Here's what we're doing. We're holding our hands. We are with you. I'm going to pray with you, and we're going to pray together. All those that have said, I'm praying. All those that are saying, I am holding the hands of those protesters all over this country. This is where this energy has to go. We've got to pray them safe. We've got to pray for them that they keep honor and courage. We got to pray for them because some of them are going to stand up even against the others who are in the street that would do them harm and would take businesses and destroy their own communities. Because I've watched many protesters who are standing up against others in those streets. Oh, there are people that are coming from outside. People who would love to see race wars. You remember the shooting that took place in the church? The boy wanted to see a race war. There are those that want to see a race war, that want to see white against black, that want to see a breakout of race in America. I got up this morning near a gun range. I heard the shots of the practicing of those at the gun range ringing out. Even right now, during a time like this. But I believe in the power of prayer. Grab my hands. I know it's not physical, but it's spiritual. And the power of God is within you, within me. Father, I thank you, first of all, for life. But I thank you for the lives of those that are out in the streets of this country. I thank you for those that want a better country. I thank you for those, Lord, whether they can express it or not, that want a better life for their country. There are many of our young people who are at home and that are not out there, but I know secretly inside they're standing with their young brothers and sisters. Lord, I pray for their families. I pray that you keep them safe. And I pray that the heart of this country will turn. We speak to the hardness of the heart. And we say turn. Lord, this country has such great life and abundance. And I know that we will hear the better angels that are on our shoulders. Thank you for what you've already done. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe the best of this country. I believe the best of ALC, and I believe the best of our churches in this city and in this nation. And I believe that we're going to be better people for this. And when we get to the other side, listen, hold the hands of your young people. You anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thank you so much. With permission of Dr. Ed Montgomery, this is something from the cut of the album, Through the Darkness. Just a little bit for you to hear. Love you. Bye-bye.
We can hear he's trying to change us. Cause you're my shepherd, please lead me through the darkness. And every day's a struggle, Lord, I really need ya. Cause you're my shepherd, please lead me through the darkness. Yeah, please lead me through the darkness. Please lead me through the darkness. Please lead me through the darkness. Cause you're my shepherd, please lead me through the darkness. Please lead me through the darkness.
Thank you for being here.
Please lead me through the darkness. Please lead me through the darkness. Cause you're my shepherd, please lead me through the darkness. Yeah, when everything is going wrong, all I need to know is that you get me through the storm. Yeah, cause if I know that, then I'm cool. Just tell me anything you need done, and I will do. I'm like a puppet and you hold the strings. Can't move anywhere without you, that's just what I mean. And my peers don't understand this. Why? Cause they don't have to do the darkness.